listen-only mode.
Good morning. Welcome back to greenprisons.org's webinar series. We want to welcome you back this year. We started last year with 3 webinars in October, November, December. Weren't real sure how it would be received, and in fact, we grew by about 30% each month. So we're pleased to have you with us, and we think this year we've lined up, at least for the first 7 months, a series of webinars that you'll find both enlightening and informative. We have this signed up this morning, as a matter of fact. We have 17 states are represented based on the number of folks that signed up, 13 vendors, and a number of other folks that we're not exactly sure of their affiliation based on their email, but it's great to have you with us, and we appreciate your participation. Last year we talked about how to contract with governments. The sustainability is linked to reentry, which we believe is key, and an examination of some of the best practices that are ongoing around the country. This year, based on the work that Paul Sheldon has done, we're going to take a look at 7 different areas of agency operation, and hopefully provide you at least with some stimulating thought about low-cost or no-cost ways that your agency can reduce their operating costs, add effective job training opportunities, and also make a contribution to a cleaner environment. Paul has a long history in the environment and has proven to be a very fast learner in corrections over the last couple of 3 years. He's well published in our business, having written for Corrections Today, an upcoming NIJ publication. He's presented at the North American Association of Wardens and Superintendents in a variety of other correctional settings, and will in fact be presenting a couple of workshops at the upcoming ACA conference on this topic. We encourage you, and I'll mention this again at the end of the webinar, but we do encourage you to, if you're going to be at ACA, to try and make it by at least one of those workshops. There are actually 4, as I look at the agenda, that are focused on sustainability, which is a quantum leap, which tells us that this whole topic is really beginning to catch on. This year, we're going to look, as I mentioned earlier, at Paul's 7 steps, and they include lighting and energy, HVAC, materials management, which also includes what you buy, how you buy it, notions towards managing waste, both through composting and recycling. We're going to look at plug-in appliances, those things that stay instantly on all the time and the kind of power that they eat up. Human capital, how we integrate people into this technology to ideally make a difference. We're going to look at some strategies for water management over the next 7 months, and also water or motors and pumps. Implicit in this discussion also, we'll be talking about the new ACA standard, not only today but as we go forward. And for those of you that belong to accredited agencies, where the standard came from and why or how you can be compliant with it. I'll also be doing a workshop for auditors that you're welcome to come by at the ACA conference next week if you're going to be out in Phoenix. These webinars are really about what you are doing out there in the field, and as you'll recall from our fall series, we had some great presentations from folks in Virginia, the Lafayette Sheriff's Department, the Bureau of Prisons, Correctional Industries Association, and we want to include you in these upcoming webinars. So as you look at those topics, if there's something there that rings a bell for you that you're doing in your agency, it's about blowing your own horn, but it's also about sharing your information with folks on the outside, maybe that are still trying to figure out where this whole sustainability thing fits for them. As it relates to sponsors, we want to continue to be able to provide this service to the field free of charge. So we need some help. Currently, the package that we buy for this out of our own pocket is capped at 99. We believe that we will, if we don't come close to that, we will exceed it today. And obviously that says we'd like to be able to get to more folks, but we need your help to be able to accomplish that. So if you are a vendor out there and you're interested in supporting this work and getting word out on your product to the field, give me a call after the webinar. Look me up at ACA. Shoot me an email at tommy@greenprisons.org, and we would welcome the opportunity to talk to you about it. These things are designed to be interactive. We get a lot of questions about how to ask questions, and I'm going to turn it over to Ann here in a moment to tell you about that and what we need to do to get started. And then from there, we'll go right into Paul's presentation, and there may be a little short blip between when we transition from my slides to his, and then we'll come back to me to wind this thing up. So Ann, why don't you tell them what we have to do to get started?
Thank you very much. We are starting the presentation. You'll notice that you can raise your hand or ask a question in your control panel. We will hold all of the questions until the end, but do know that we see the questions and we'll answer them as we move along. Raising your hand lets me know that you do want to ask a question, and everyone is muted right now, so you can hear us, but we can't hear you. At the end, if you would like to raise your hand and also, type in that you would like to speak your question or make a comment, please type that into the questions area so we can see it. And now I'm going to turn this over to Paul. You'll see your white screen there for just a minute while we organize him to hop in.
Good morning, everyone. Anna, you see my screen?
Got it.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for the wonderful introduction. And Tommy, thank you for the privilege of speaking with this group this morning. I want to say how impressed I am with the work that you have done with the Clean and Green Committee at ACA.
Muted.
greenprisons.org. This is really an important milestone in the history of sustainability in corrections. Many institutions have done a lot already. Some institutions are just getting started, and some haven't even looked at it yet. So we're going to try to speak to the whole spectrum this morning. We'll talk a little bit about the broad context, and then I'd like to spend most of the time giving examples of what is being done in correctional institutions to implement cost savings through sustainability-oriented measures. As Tommy mentioned, I am a senior consultant with Natural Capitalism Solutions, which is headquartered out in Longmont, Colorado. This is our founder, Hunter Lovins, working from her favorite office, the back of a horse. She's doing email on her iPhone. And Hunter is a nationally and internationally recognized authority on sustainability. And Hunter will tell you that the science around sustainability issues like climate change and energy or water conservation is uncertain. Here's the science that Hunter likes. This is ladies' undergarments for the last 200 years. But the science doesn't really matter. Let's assume that, for example, the climate skeptics are right. There's no such thing as climate change. It's a hoax. Now, I wouldn't want to go to the casino on those odds, but if all you care about is your institution's budget, then you would do exactly what you would do if you were scared to death about climate change. Here's an example. This is Ida from the county jail in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Ida is the administrator there, and this is her husband. We met down in Florida a couple years ago, and Ida was just getting started. She hadn't looked at anything for the jail until her father-in-law, who was on a fixed income and was retired, started putting those curly-Q little pigtail light bulbs in his house. and found that he saved almost $50 a month. And for a senior citizen on a fixed income to save $50 a month is a big deal. So that was what got I just started looking at sustainability measures for the county jail. In the meantime, the American Correctional Association has put a lot of work with Tommy's leadership and the Clean and Green Committee into setting some audit standards for what should institutions be looking at with regard to sustainability. And in that regard, they have passed a standard which says that a program shall demonstrate that it has examined within the audit cycle and where appropriate and feasible, implemented strategies that promote recycling, energy and water conservation, pollution reduction, and utilization of renewable energy alternatives. That standard was intentionally written to include those terms appropriate and feasible because this is not intended to be a heavy hammer but really an inspiration for institutions to save money where it's possible to do so and increase health and safety at the same time. There are some general comments that go with the standard about ways to manage that are more cost effective and deliver superior performance. And then more details on recycling, pollution reduction, utilization of renewable energy alternatives, and other measures. I'm going through some of these slides fairly quickly because will be available on the greenprisons.org website after we're done today, so anyone who's interested can download that and read in greater detail. Following the adoption of the standard, the American Correctional Association also adopted a formal policy, a position statement on behalf of the organization, which specifically said that ACA fully supports appropriate, short and long-term cost-effective facilities and materials management strategies that are resource efficient and environmentally responsible. So the organization stands firmly behind this notion of implementing cost-effective, sustainability-oriented solutions. And here's an example. This is Donna Albrecht, who's the kitchen supervisor at the Boulder County Jail out in Colorado. Donna's looking down at what's left of breakfast. Every day when they finish breakfast, they take all these and any other food scraps during the day out to these big compost bins on the back slab. This is Commander Bruce Haas, who runs the jail. And they keep all their food waste in here that's stirred with a giant auger while it gets composted. It takes about a month to turn it into good nutrient compost. And then they take it out and spread it on this 2-acre garden, which they maintain all summer long, and grow all the vegetables that are used to feed the 400 residents in the county institution. In fact, they entered their vegetables in the county fair every year for quite a while, and here's a sample of all the blue ribbons they won. They finally, the people who organized the county fair asked them to stop entering because they said it wasn't fair, they were winning too much. So today we're going to talk about 7 easy first steps, because when institutions start looking at sustainability, the most common question we get is, where do we start? What do we do first? And so we're going to look at 7 areas that Tommy outlined before. First of all, the importance of integrating technology and people. Second, lighting. Then heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, which includes the building envelope and all the insulation measures that are so important to having an efficient building. Plug-in appliances, including motors and pumps. We'll look at materials flow, including recycling and toxics, and the possibility of moving towards zero waste. We'll talk about water. And lastly, energy, including transportation. And we'll have time for questions at the end, so if you think of something that you want to know more about along the way, please type a note in the question box on your screen or make a note to yourself, and we'll have an opportunity to ask questions later on. Before we get into the specifics, let's talk about the likely future. If you don't implement anything having to do with sustainability, it's not entirely certain that anything bad will happen. But utility cost projections are typically underestimated. Historically, as we look at what the utilities have projected for how much it's going to cost for electricity, natural gas, water, waste disposal, those kinds of things, sewage treatment, the projections usually come in lower than what actually happens for the real costs. Also, there are various national and international situations with regard to energy and water and other resources that can impact us. There's been a lot of news recently about Iran threatening to mine the Straits of Hormuz. If something like that happens, it'll be a disruption to the international system, which will cause price increases. Also, current information from physical plants and corrections is not always easily available. For example, many institutions have their utility bills paid out of the general fund for the county or the state or the agency, and they don't even see them. They don't get specific information that allows them to plan for their individual situation. And lastly, the general state of the economy and corrections budgets is not what it once was, and so it's not like we can just go back and get more money if their utility bills go up. So here's a budget model that was developed by Gene Atherton, who's the retired deputy director out in the Colorado Department of Corrections. Gene has just headed off to Kabul, Afghanistan to head the U.S. prison system in Afghanistan. And he and I prepared these numbers a little while back based on real numbers from actual facilities which we masked and consolidated to give an average picture of a correctional institution. So let's assume we have 1,200 beds, medium custody, and the facility was constructed in the last 20 years. This typical facility would have a combined utilities bill for energy, water, and waste of maybe $1,125,000. And if we assumed that there was a 5% increase per year over the next 20 years, from 2010 to 2030, the utilities cost in 2030 would be $2,984,960. That's a 265% increase. The annual bill would go up to $1,000,008, and that's not the kind of money that would, excuse me, the annual bill would go up by $1,000,008, and $1,800,000 is not something you can just go back to the state legislature and say, oh, we need another $1,000,008 to pay our utility bills. It impacts salaries, it impacts public safety. It's not easy to get that money. It could be even worse. If Congress or the EPA require carbon controls or some kind of restrictions on energies, it could cause an additional 5% increase in costs, and that's conservative. So that $1,125,000 utility bill could go up by as much as 10% per year. And if that were the case, it would be a 673% increase, which would cause a $6 million increase in the annual cost of utilities. Once again, that's going to impact other kinds of planning for public safety and coverage. Here's a projection that was done by a regional agency, just using Colorado as an example. On the left, we have 2002 cost of electricity per kilowatt hour with a combined projection based on data from Xcel Energy, the Department of Energy, the Energy Information Agency, showing that by 2030 that cost will go up from 7 cents a kilowatt hour to 39 cents a kilowatt hour. So you can see that we need to plan for the future cost of utilities. It can impact greatly monthly budgets. Now here's a more optimistic scenario. What if that same institution were to invest in energy efficiency, which instead of having a 5% increase, would have a 5% increase in efficiency? Instead of paying an increase in the utility bills, the institution would make a one-time investment increasing the efficiency with which they use energy, and all energy planners will tell you that a 5% improvement is easy. It's the sort of thing that can be accomplished by turning off light switches and putting out 3 colored trash bins to start recycling. And that 5% savings would then avoid that $1.859,960 increase in annual costs, and over the course of that 20 years, that would result in a savings of $1,550 per inmate in this institution. So instead of having to pay more, they end up saving. And you can run your own numbers on what would happen if you could increase efficiency by 10 or 15%. So where's the money come from for all this? A lot of institutions say, oh, we don't have enough money. Well, every state, county, federal institution has money somewhere. It's just being saved for things like replacing roofs or other planned costs. But let's look at the benefit of investing. This graph's a little hard to read, but the yellow bar on the left side represents fluorescent lamps and fixtures. And these numbers were generated by the Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory out in California to show what is the return on investment of money invested in different kinds of energy efficiency. And we're just using energy as an example here. You can do the same things with water and waste. On fluorescent lamps and fixtures, the return on investment is 42%. For clothes washers, it's 37%. The most expensive thing that they looked at was increasing wall and attic insulation, and the return there was still 7%. And then we have these black lines going across that show different returns back before the bubble burst on different kinds of investments. Now, I don't know anybody whose 301k plan is still earning even 7%. And so wherever the money is parked, it's not doing as well as the return that you could get on investing in energy or water efficiency or reducing waste disposal. Here's another way of displaying that same information. If we look at the purchase price of different technologies, the annual savings on the bills, and the simple payback period for money invested, the worst buy, again, is increasing wall and attic insulation, which is going to last for 20, 30 years or longer. And the simple payback is still 16.1 years, even if you invest in very fancy insulated windows and super insulation in the attic and floors and walls. And the rate of return still turns out to be 8%, which is pretty good compared with what most people are getting on their savings. So let's talk about some specific examples. We'll talk about integrating technology and people. And this is a whole area of forming a green team, getting people involved. It really helps to have participation from the top down, even if the warden or superintendent or the administrator or the commissioner just attends the first meeting. Having that endorsement from the people in authority and power really helps to get this going, because engaging in these green practices increases health for staff and inmates from reduced toxics. It reduces medical costs from cleaner and greener practices. And today we do have on the line some people from Correct Path, Bert Klein, who's the president, and Lee Kelsey, and I'm hoping at the end we'll get a chance to have them say a little bit about the benefits of reducing toxics in the correctional environment. But also these integrating people can provide job satisfaction for the correctional staff and reduced absenteeism, while also employing inmates in money-saving activities that teach useful job skills. And they've been shown to reduce recidivism. We'll also talk about lighting and give some examples of what's happening with lighting. We'll talk about HVAC, which is walls, attics, floors first. Do the efficiency first, plugging leaks, sealing ducts, doing periodic maintenance, and then going on to things like tankless hot water heaters, variable air valve, heating systems, multi-zone heating and cooling systems, and general upgrading of the equipment, replacing uninsulated windows, and doing life cycle assessments and reducing heat islands from parking lots that cause buildings to heat up in the summer. And we'll also talk a little bit about plug-in appliances, including motors and the importance of efficiency there. We'll go on to materials and toxics, which Tommy mentioned earlier, includes composting, recycling, everything that it flows through the institution. It's a physical substance that you buy and use, and what does it then go to? Does it go to the landfill, or does it go to a useful or productive purpose? And we'll talk briefly about water, and lastly, we'll touch on energy and transportation. Obviously, each of these topics could be a whole book in itself, and greenprisons.org will be spending more time in the future webinars on each of these subjects. So these are our 7 easy steps. We'll start with integrating technology and people. First of all, form a green team. Get folks together, talk about what they know, what they're interested in, what they're passionate about, and there are many innovative and creative ways to do this. One institution that we know about, for example, came up with a way to link water savings to inmate trust accounts. And so they offered a very small bonus correlated on the water savings that the institution was able to accomplish on a monthly basis, and a portion of that money went to inmate trust accounts. It was very inspiring in getting inmates engaged because they saw the benefit as well as the institution. As an example of integrating technology and people, I'm just going to look at gardens today. There are many other things we could look at, but lots of institutions start with gardens. Up at Evergreen Corrections in British Columbia, they began to put not just vegetable gardens, but flower gardens in their visiting area. They created recreational spaces, a sanctuary garden, a labyrinth, a space for recreation for children, and spirit grounds that acknowledge their First Nations tribal heritage in Canada. This was their way of getting people involved, and then it expanded to other things. Based on that, inspired by that project, the San Francisco County Jail also did a horticulture project, very similar, promoting good mental and physical health. San Francisco County Jail got a soft spot in my heart for the banner that they had on the outside of the county jail that used to say, "How do you get a 48-year-old man to stop beating his wife?" And then underneath it, it said, "Talk to him when he's 18. Very inspiring place, the work that they're doing. And inspired by the San Francisco program, the Cook County Jail in Chicago, Illinois, also has done a lot of work with gardening, and they're producing thousands of pounds of vegetables every year that go to feed the residents of the institution and help the inmates gain future employment skills. Lastly, we have the California Institution for Women out in Chino, and I mention this, although it's really very similar to the other programs, but it was entirely funded by private money. Some innovative people at the institution approached the Strauss Foundation and Mountain Dew to obtain funding to do a garden program at the institution. So some of these programs are very useful for community relations development as well as the internal benefits to the institution. Let's go on to talk about lighting. Lighting is something that almost every institution uses, and there's some very innovative things happening in technology. I don't mean to endorse any of the vendors that we're talking about today. I just want to give examples that there are vendors that are offering solutions and opportunities to institutions, many of whom are very happy to consult on a very reasonable basis to help evaluate what is right for your institution. So here's an example that I picked up at the ACA conference a little while back. Keenall Manufacturing is making a specific line of LED lights that are designed for correctional institutions. LEDs are light-emitting diodes. They're little pieces of plastic that are designed to radiate very bright light with a very low wattage. Originally, light bulbs, as designed by Thomas Edison, were actually little heaters that happen to generate some light. And so we were not entirely complete in our understanding when we talk about a 100-watt light bulb as being the definition of what puts out light. It's not the wattage that puts out light. It's the number of lumens. And so LEDs are much more efficient. They can produce the same amount of light as a 100-watt light bulb will with as little as 15 watts of electricity. So here's another example of LED lighting installed. We don't have a lot of correctional examples yet, but this is a food market in Longmont, Colorado. If you see the fluorescent lights up on the ceiling there, they aren't fluorescents. They're actually strings of LEDs. They did the same thing in their refrigerated cases, and many institutions, correctional institutions, have walk-in chillers and coolers, where if you have an incandescent light bulb in there, it's putting a heater inside your cooler. So it's much more efficient to install LED lighting in any kind of space that's cooled. There are several examples of leading LED manufacturers who are reaching out to the correctional market: Clean Light, Green Light, Cree, Albio. I mentioned Keenall earlier. These are all readily available on the web. And some of these manufacturers are also offering turnkey financing for correctional institutions, where you put up nothing in front and the institution will repay the investment made by the installing company out of the savings that are obtained on a monthly basis. These are called pay-for-performance contracts, and we'll talk a little bit more about that if we have time later on. But it's a turnkey operation, including design and installation and LED lighting solutions. Many engineering companies will do the same with water, HVAC, building controls, and that sort of thing. Speaking of HVAC, it's a very great opportunity. It's one of the bigger ticket items. It requires getting some fire in place. But for example, Bridgewater Correctional Complex in Massachusetts did a complex-wide energy management and control system, which include combined heat and power upgrades. And over the lifetime of the technology that they installed, they're going to save $27 million. That's the kind of savings that's worth looking at. Another example in Boulder, Colorado, once again back at the county jail there. It's a little difficult to see in this picture on the left, but there's a little device hanging from the ceiling in the day room that looks kind of like a big wasp's nest. And it's called an air pair. They hang from the ceiling and they circulate the stagnant air so that all the heat doesn't congregate at the top, or all your cold air doesn't get stuck at the bottom. And by circulating the air, they actually reduce heating and cooling costs by as much as 40%. So that's an example of a less intensive way of saving a lot on your heating and cooling bills. Many more examples to give there. Let's keep moving so that we get a chance to talk together with your questions later on. If we look at plug-in appliances, and this anything that plugs into the wall or is hardwired into the wall, including motors and pumps, and also the correctional industries that are located in your facilities, where most institutions just pay the electricity bill for the correctional industry, which may have lathes or chillers or very intensive heating equipment, that is worth looking at how much electricity it's using. The leading program in the country for increasing appliance efficiency is called Energy Star. It's sponsored both by the Department of Energy and the Environmental Protection Agency. and by offering a consumer seal, it's an Energy Star label that appears on appliances, they identify the top 25% of appliances. Appliances that are going to be at least 25% more efficient than the other appliances that are on the market, or that will at least be in the top 25% of efficiency. And so this is continually upgraded on an annual or biannual basis to endorse with the Energy Star label TVs, refrigerators, stoves, air conditioners, any kind of a consumer device that uses electricity. And so one very simple step that any institution can take is when you go to purchase anything that plugs into the wall, including office equipment, just look for that Energy Star label, and that'll get you up into the top 25% of energy efficiency. Another area is motors and pumps. You have all kinds of motors and pumps around your institution, everything from air conditioning to your sewage and wastewater treatment. And it's a very good idea to look at the efficiency of those motors, starting with variable speed drives. Is it just on or off? Is it on all the time? Or is there a way for it to start up and go with the load? I've seen this with backup generators also, where some institutions found that they were using their backup generators so often that it made sense to have two generators, one that carried the full load during the day and one that carried the lighter load at night. And they saved a lot of energy, enough to pay for this second system. Many engineering companies will come in and oftentimes for no charge will do an analysis of your institution to find out what your opportunities are. Here's just one example. Emerson Motors will come in, and you can see from this very poorly presented and difficult to read slide that all the areas that they look at and the dozens of ways that are possible to save money from the engineering of electronic devices, fans, blowers, motors, doors that are using electricity throughout the institution, and how they can help increase the efficiency and reduce the cost. Let's go on into the big area of materials flow, including toxics, and the possibility of moving towards zero waste. We're not going to cover everything here, but I just want to touch on a few possibilities, starting with the food waste that comes out of institutions. The state of Washington has done a lot of leadership in this area of begin using native plants that require less water in their landscape, that are grown in greenhouses, and assisting the Army in the region in doing prairie restoration, which was paid for by the Army. They grow a lot of vegetables, and then they compost all of that food waste. And one institution, for example, was looking at a $4 million upgrade to their sewage treatment plant because of the suspended particulates in their sewage effluent. After they installed their composting system, the suspended particulates in their effluent went down so much that they were able to defer that capital upgrade for 5 years or longer. That's big money that becomes available for other things. And there are many kinds of recycling programs in the correctional environment. Bicycle repair is very popular because bicycles can be donated to local children and low-income families, and that generates positive publicity. Some institutions are keeping bees, which are very useful to the surrounding areas and the surrounding agriculture. And once again, the institutions that have done these kinds of composting things with worms or with aerated rows are finding that they can become regional institutions. Here's a program up at Cedar Creek facility that's so extensive that they have their own website, the Sustainable Prisons Project, which has not only attracted investment for the institution, but has garnered a lot of positive press. And it's very unusual for correctional institutions to get a story in a national or international publication that has to do with something other than an escape or a riot. So these institutions in Washington have been very satisfied with the attention that they get for this program. Some of the other institutions that are composting have become regional facilities that take in waste from other areas, and it actually becomes a profit center for the institution. There are lots of ways to do composting, and I'll be happy to talk with anyone who's interested at another time to get the details. But just using Washington as an example, their yearly savings have ranged from $200,000 to $300,000 a year since the programs were initiated in 2004. So once again, that might be a few correctional officer positions that get funded because of the savings from a program like this. In New York City, the Rikers Island jail system has put in gardens both for growing food and to brighten their visitor area. And another area of recycling is construction wastes. In North Carolina, they're recycling construction compounds. In Maryland, they found that the bill for decommissioning an old prison that they were going to completely tear down went from $12 million down to $5 million when they looked at ways to recycle the construction materials and things like bricks that could be sold on the open market. That made it possible for them to move forward with the project that they didn't have otherwise funded. Down in Mississippi, growing a lot of vegetables, millions of dollars worth of vegetables. In fact, they found that cash revenues generated by growing vegetables were almost the same as what they were paying for their food service, and so they ended up employing inmates and growing thousands of pounds of food. And they use biofuel vehicles in their agricultural programs. They've been doing this for 100 years. I remember Richard Stalder, the former commissioner down there, said, well, if having a mulch pile is sustainable, we've been doing that for 40 years. And they're very invested in this program. The Angola State Prison often used to be called the Farm, and other institutions where they have farming and agricultural practices as an integral part of the institution. They also have a horticulture program, and they're recycling, for example, used toner cartridges in their office. Many ways to do that. Another way of saving money and increasing safety is looking at less toxic cleaning materials. And once again, I mentioned that Bert Klein and Lee Kelsey from CorrectPack are on the line today. I hope we'll get a chance to hear from them. Institutions such as North Carolina are using not only less toxic cleaning compounds, but also vegetable-based inks and other kinds of lower toxic products, because everyone knows if you have a toxic substance or a caustic substance in a correctional environment, there's an immediate risk that that's going to get thrown in the face of a correctional officer, or inmates will use it against each other, or they'll drink things trying to get intoxicated. It's always something that's going to provide peripheral savings and increased safety and reduce cost in other areas when you can reduce the risk of that kind of an incident. Coming into the home stretch here, let's talk a little bit about water. Some examples of things that could be done with water. One of the more glamorous ideas is rain barrels and collecting water in drainage swales and native plant gardens. These require cost analysis, but there's some institutions that are doing them. Another one is green roofs, which obviously has security concerns, but there are institutions that have put them in and find that they have better insulation value, and they also do not collect as much heat, and they last longer than the more traditional kinds of roofs. One system that hasn't been tried in a correctional setting yet, but is being installed commercially, is what's called aquaponics, where you can use water treatment as a way of providing nutrients to grow fish in a tank and vegetables on the top, and then you can grind up composted food materials and feed it to the fish. It's a self-contained operation, and in an area of 90 by 120 feet, an aquaponic system can produce 60 to 70,000 pounds of vegetables and 23,000 pounds of fish on an annual basis. So it's an opportunity that's right for people taking advantage of it in a correctional institution. And I should also mention on the way by, as they're finding in Kentucky and Maryland and Virginia, that using some kinds of cleaners, such as CorrectPack, and there are others, will increase water efficiency. And so this kind of investment in less toxic cleaning compounds oftentimes leads to using less water, and also will use less of the cleaning product. Many of these companies will say our mission is to help you use less of our product. And so that's very inspiring. Lastly, we'll talk about energy. I'll start with bioenergy. Indiana has made a pretty big investment in biomass boilers at several of their institutions, where they're saving significant amounts of money by identifying sources of wood chips and wood waste, which they can burn in a wood-fired boiler instead of burning oil or diesel. And it minimizes the costs and also the environmental impact and various climate impacts. Another form of biofuel is using waste cooking oil. Up in Illinois, they've developed a very innovative program to convert cooking oil to biofuel, which then fuels the vehicles that they use for the program that run around and collect the waste food oil. And if that's able to increase in size, other kinds of diesel vehicles can run on that biofuel. Probably everybody's favorite example of energy is solar energy. Depending on the climate, solar can be appropriate, and there are many places that are not normally thought of as solar environments, like Washington State and the Northeast, where they're finding that solar is still cost effective, especially if there are government incentives. Of course, California is an obvious one. At Ironwood State Prison, they have a very big system. They also have a similar system at Chuckawalla Valley. Any place that's got a vacant land adjacent to a correctional institution is a good opportunity to look at installing these solar photovoltaic systems, which typically generate a lot of the electricity that's needed by the institution, but also when they're running, they'll generate more electricity than is needed, which can be sold back to the utility and produce income for the facility. Transportation is an area that we could spend a lot of time on. There are things like low rolling resistance tires that are pretty easy to invest in and save fuel, but one of the more popular future strategies is electric vehicles, which we find a lot of institutions looking at the opportunity to do something like solar carports, which provide shade during the day and also generate electricity. And some of the more innovative programs, this is one out in California, will combine those with charging stations for plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, which are coming down the pike very quickly here. Lastly, we'll talk about the energy impacts of having video visiting, which has its own technical challenges, but a number of institutions are installing video visiting and also videotape, not videotape, but live video appearances for parole hearings and court hearings that can be done by video, and then you don't have to take the staff and the energy required to put people in a bus or a van and transport them as far as they have to. Same with families traveling to the institution. These video visiting are very useful. One of my favorite examples, once again from Washington State, is a program that they put together to very strictly limit but allow text messaging between parents and their adolescent children. And they found that kids would not respond to a written letter or wouldn't take a phone call or couldn't arrange for a phone call, but they would get a text message and they would respond to text messages to their incarcerated parent. And what they also found was that when they studied that population, the incidence of violence, inmate on inmate and inmate on staff violence, dramatically dropped among the population that had text messaging contact with their adolescent children. So some of these remote viewing examples are really useful. Now, some institutions say, well, I don't need to do it one step at a time. We have a mandate from our legislature or from the federal government. There's an executive order or from the county board of supervisors or whoever the jurisdictional entity is to engage in sustainability-oriented practices. So institutions like El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas will do everything at once: lighting, building controls, variable speed controls on their motors, kitchen exhaust fans, steam optimization, rooftops, looking at water, ozone, lots of different things they can do. And they're finding that if they can finance it, and there are many third-party entities like energy service companies that will come in to help finance these big operations, a large investment made all at the same time will have significant savings across the institution. In this example, they achieved positive cash flow within 8 years. Their annual return on investment over 10 years was 12.2%. So that's very good, and the legislatures are usually very happy with those kinds of things, and there are lots of other measures that garner public attention. These kinds of institutional commitments are sweeping in some instances. In a state that is already committed to that sort of thing, like Washington State, you can have an institution that achieves certification as LEED Silver or LEED Gold, LEED being the leading energy and environmental design criteria published by the U.S. Green Building Council, and they can do many things at once. Boulder County Jail did everything all at once because they had a mandate from the county government, and they were able to obtain financing to invest in these things all at the same time, and they found the payback was very fast and it saved them money. There's some resources out there for this. The National Institute of Justice is about to publish, we hope, in fact, in the next couple of days so that it can be announced at ACA next week, a Greening Corrections Technology Guidebook, which is based on these same 7 steps, and that'll be available on justdebt.org, we hope within the next few days. The National Institute of Corrections last year published a Greening of Corrections Guide, which focuses on this LEED system, the leading energy and environmental design from U.S. Green Building Council, and also green job training and the involvement and impact on recidivism of engaging inmates in green practices while they're institutionalized in a way that they can achieve a certificate that reduces the barriers to employment once they get out. And so some people will say to me, well, how do you put the fear of God into the administrators, the people that really that need to make the decisions about coughing up some money or giving the go-ahead for this sort of thing? And one thing I say is put the fear of China in them. Here's a train station and a athletic institution in China where they put 6.7 megawatts of solar generating capacity on the top of these facilities, and those facilities provide job training and energy for the future. China finds that their green institutions are performing so well that they're getting criticism from the surrounding business community saying it's not fair. Nonetheless, we should move forward with principles of sustainability. Buy time and save money by radically increasing resource productivity. Redesign for sustainability. Anytime you're redesigning anything, look at principles like biomimicry, closed loops, no waste, no toxicity, whole system design, cradle-to-cradle kinds of thinking. And lastly, manage for the restoration of human and natural capital, because 95% of our institutionalized inmates are going back into the community. And are we putting them back there with better skills, with a different self-image, with a sense of mission about participating in a process of making the world a better place? These are, once again, commitments that have peripheral benefits that are often underappreciated. You know, you've heard the saying, the second mouse gets the cheese. Well, with regard to sustainability, we really need to be like this little guy, strap on a helmet and go for it. And on that note, I will turn you back to the tender mercies of Ann Norris and Tommy Norris to see if anyone has questions that they would like to
Unmuted.
ask at this point.
Paul, thank you
Tommy,
so
I'm going to give
much.
the thing back to you.
All righty. Thank you so much. A lot of information in a very short period of time, and it bears repeating, I think. The purpose of these webinars, as much as anything, is to stimulate your thought, your ideas around this topic, and to make you aware that there are a lot of folks out there in our business engaged in sustainable practices at one way or another, the realities are that's what's motivating them in most instances is the dollars and cents. There's been a lot of creative ways. Paul touched on them. We've had workshops on them and will again on ways to finance this stuff in the absence of appropriated dollars. So I won't beat that dog to death. We'll be talking about that more throughout the year. I would reemphasize a couple of things that were in Paul's presentation that make it a little easier to embark on this. First of all, you know, if you don't know how much your utilities cost at your facility, and surprisingly, in many instances, a lot of folks don't, because it's something that's always had to get paid no matter what it was, so nobody paid much attention to that. Now's the time, because that could be your secret little piggy bank that you've never had to tap before. We talk about some of the payback on this stuff coming in 2, 5, 7 years. You have to take a long-term view, but there are also some things that you can do that have very short-term, literally within months kinds of return on the dollar on investment, and we'll talk more about those as well. And finally, sustainability, I believe, is a great opportunity to integrate prison industries. I think it's a great opportunity to put inmates to work. Paul talked about the project in Maryland where they'll be demolishing the House of Correction, and Director Maynard has come up with an approach that will ideally not only create significant savings, but also put a lot of inmates to work and giving them some marketable skills when they hit the street. So with those sort of summary remarks done, we do have one question. If I can figure out how to make this thing work here, we'll get.
Do you want me to unmute?
Yeah. Okay. If you can.
Okay. So Sarah Patterson, it looks like she has a question. I'm going to unmute your microphone, and you can talk and ask your question. It looks like Paul might be the best person to answer. Sarah, are you there?
I am.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I am the director of a nonprofit. Hi, I've heard your name from Beth Wakis in San Francisco, Paul. I'm the director of a nonprofit in Oregon that helps to either establish or enhance vegetable gardens in prisons. So we're a nonprofit. We recruit volunteers, and this year we've started teaching the Master Gardener class, and so far in 2 institutions in our first year, we graduated 17 inmates with the Master Gardener certification. So I'm wondering if there are any other states or facilities that are bringing in this piece of or are the gardens all Department of Corrections driven?
I don't know of any other examples besides your program and the Insight Prison Garden Project at San Quentin where a community nonprofit is driving. But I would expect that if we checked at Rikers and up in British Columbia and at some of the other programs that are underway, that there are community links. Oftentimes they're quiet, and so they're giving the credit to the correctional institution, but in fact it's a collaborative process. So I'd be happy to put you in touch with some of these other groups, and perhaps if there's someone on the line who knows about this who'd like to raise their hand, we'd be happy to hear about other programs. And let me say thanks for the work that you're doing. Sounds very
Thank
inspiring.
you so much.
Okay, Sarah, I'm going to turn your mic off again. And it looks like Patricia Dean Wilson has a question. And Patricia, I'm going to unmute you here just really quickly. Patricia, are you there? No. Hello? Maybe not. If you have access to your keyboard and can type your question in, we can answer it that way as well. And I don't see any other hands raised or any other questions.
Bert Klein is still on the line. Perhaps you could unmute him so he could say a few words about the value of non-toxic cleaners.
Sure. Hang on one second. Let me find it. There he is. All right, Bert, I'm going to unmute you.
And as we're unmuting Bert, I'd also like to say that Bert was very helpful in developing the 7 steps approach. Gene Atherton and Bert and I worked together several years ago. We originally had 10 steps, which we called low-lying fruit. It wasn't low-hanging fruit. It was actually lying on the ground. And so thanks, Bert, for your assistance in developing this whole structure.
Oh, you're welcome, Paul. And thank you for giving me a moment here. The aspect of non-toxic cleaners to me is very interesting, but I think we all should be using non-toxic cleaners. It makes it simpler in a correctional environment. We first got introduced to corrections about 30 years ago with a very simple premise that correctional facilities needed safer formulations that couldn't be turned into weapons and with a system that could actually be controlled in the correctional environment. And I think that that extends to everything that's purchased beyond just cleaning materials, because you get choices when you make purchases of what you want to choose. And some of those things have a benefit long term if you're talking about, you know, the curly light bulbs that over time, when the more you put in, the less energy you use, or down the line, just even having cleaning materials and learning how to save water, which continues to be a bigger and bigger issue in more and more states. You get the savings by making good choices along the way.
Thanks so much, Bert. And one of the other areas that a lot of institutions are looking at is not just the upfront cost, but the life cycle cost. Are there cleanup costs associated or decommissioning costs associated with the choices you make up front? Are the packaging products, the cardboard boxes and the plastic bottles or the metal cans in which the product comes packaged recyclable? Are they made from recycled materials? These kinds of things reduce life cycle costs, especially in an institution which is recycling. Your institution has a plastics recycling program. If all of your cleaning products come packaged in packages, bottles and cans that are recyclable, then that feeds right into an institutional opportunity. Thanks, Bert.
All right. It looks like there's one more question from, yes?
Go ahead, take the question, and
yes.
then go ahead, take the question.
Yeah, there's one more question. It's from Chris Grissom, and Chris, I'm going to unmute your mic if you want to speak here. Chris, are you there? Hello? Oh, maybe it doesn't work, but his question says, I'm looking for a template to use for a green cleaning plan if anyone has something they would share. Oh, sorry, no mic. No problem, Chris. Tommy, I don't know if you want to talk about how people can access some more of this information, and if anyone does have a green cleaning plan, how we can make that available to the folks that are interested.
Yeah, Chris, we will get back to you with suggestions there, and Tommy, you can take it from here.
Yeah, I was just going to say that certainly Bert Klein's company with Portion Pack does have a structured training plan. There are other kinds of approaches as well, but if you want to shoot me an email or Paul, either one after this, I think we can hook you up with something. I want to return real quickly to Sarah's question and comments. I had the opportunity to talk to her at some length about 3 weeks ago, and she does have a website that didn't get mentioned in her question that I would like to recommend for you. It's lettucegrows.org, and it's lettuce like just let us grow. I think the project that she's embarked on is really the kind of thing that you can replicate. Again, there's a lot of emphasis on reentry and ways to tie it to what we're doing and this, that, and the other thing. And reentry is one of those few places where I think there's any outside dollars for corrections right now. And I would encourage you to check her website out. I think a lot of you probably have horticultural programs going on already and are supplementing your food service budget one way or another, formally or informally, and to take advantage of the to be able to get some certification for these folks before they go out the door by creating some sort of relationship with organizations. I think that would make sense. And it looks like Tim Wharton has a question real quickly.
Tim just wants to let folks know that he is part of the Ecologic Solutions, which is also a green cleaning chemical company, and you can visit their website at ecologicsolutions.com. We are blowing up with questions here at and comments at the very end here. We've got about 3 minutes, and let's see. One comment about another way to reduce cost, recidivism. This is coming from Beth Wakus. Just finished a study from our gardening program that shows less than 10% of men who left our program returned to prison as compared to the CDCR's 70%. So that's a great testimonial to this sort of work.
And their program is another wonderful program, insightgardenprogram.org, for people who'd like to check it out on the web.
Yeah, yep. And let's see. So there's a lot of folks looking for more information about this sort of thing. I would recommend that you stay tuned to Green Prisons as we go through these next few months of webinars. We'll do one each month on a selected topic from the 7 steps that Paul reviewed today. We'll dive in a little more deeply into each topic and provide some additional information. We will also be at the ACA conference here this weekend through the beginning of next week in Phoenix. If anyone is going to be there, we would love to say hi and talk with you about your programs, answer questions, that sort of thing. Tommy, do you want to just sort of close it out here?
Yeah, I'll wind it up real quickly, Ann. Thank you. We are running up on our hour, and I know folks have institutions to run and places to go. I would reiterate, if you're going to be at ACA, the good folks with the North American Association of Wardens and Superintendents have invited us to sort of take up shop in their headquarters suite, and we will be up there courtesy of the support of some of our vendors and supporters. It's a good opportunity to come up and mix and mingle and learn about NAWS, a very important organization. You do not have to be a warden to be a member, and in fact they encourage you to come by, so we'd love to see you and meet you in the NAWS suite. Our next webinar is February the 15th, the same time. You'll get anybody who's on this webinar will get an email reminder of that. Given the flush of questions and whatnot, I'm really hoping that we do hear from you if one of these topics rings a bell for you and you would like to talk about something that you are doing in your institution, whether it's lighting, water, horticulture, recycling, composting, whatever, we'd love to have you present. We'd like to have about 2 or 3 practitioners, and if you've got a vendor that you've worked with, we did the thing with Virginia last fall, who had Johnson Controls explain part of what they did with them. That's certainly an opportunity to do that. If you are a vendor and would like to support a particular topic or webinar or a part of the series, we'd certainly love to talk to you about that. We will. The other thing is that if you just want to send us about something neat that you're doing, Bill Peck with the United States Navy's Corrections Detachment sent us, and it's on our website now, information about a new lead facility that they built that does in fact have have grass growing on their roof that Paul mentioned. So there's lots of innovative things happening out there. We would love to share the information about what you're doing on our website. With that, for Paul and for Ann, I want to thank you for hanging with us here as we go a minute over. But we hope you'll join us again. If you've got any questions or comments, please let me know. There will be an evaluation that pops up on your screen at the end of this webinar. When we close out, I encourage you to take 5 minutes and complete that for me because your input's important in terms of how we manage these webinars and look at topics in the future. Again, thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you either at ACA next week or back here for our next webinar on February the 15th. Thanks for being with us.